my bad. There you go. Sorry about that. When's the time you saw something you couldn't believe? We're talking about faith today. Seeing is believing. There are things that are too hard to believe. So I remember in 2002, Korea hosted the World Cup. My dad and I would wake up at 3 a.m., watch the soccer matches. It was the most exciting time in a Korean person's life. Historically, they've never done well. They would always qualify. But every year, it would end with, just disappointment, just shaking our heads. Do we dare talk about this summer's World Cup? They lost to South Africa, for crying out loud. No offense to any South Africans out there, but come on, how do you do that, right? In 2002, by some miracle, they beat Italy, one of the best teams in the world, on the header by a guy named An. I remember that guy. They make it to the final 8, and who do we face? They face Spain. Spain is a powerhouse, one of the best European nations, one of the favorites to win the World Cup. They're going to steamroll over this tiny little Asian country and go to the semifinals. So what happens? They play for a full 90 minutes. It's tied 0-0. They go to overtime, and they play another 30 minutes, and it's still tied. So my dad at this point, he's not talking. He's glued to the TV. His heartbeat must have been off the chains. I was too young to know it at the time, but this game meant a lot to him. He's watched since the 1960s with his dad, hoping that this little country of South Korea would just win a game. They've always been underestimated, been the ultimate underdogs. They try so hard, but they never go far. So to kind of see his pride swell up round after round, to see his home nation be hosting, and now they're a penalty kick away from the semifinals. No Asian countries ever made it this far. It was nothing short of a miracle at the time. So what happens? They go to penalties. They're in a shootout. And yes, I understand that the Korean manager this year was hated, whatever, but give him a break. The final shootout, the one that clinched the semifinal berth for Korea, was the captain, a guy named Hong Myung-bo. He clears the net, gets past the keeper, and just a sea of red explodes. And oh my gosh, I don't think I've ever seen my dad so proud in his life. And just 40 years of frustration being overlooked as the Koreans just being swept away in that moment, we just celebrated. We did it, army of red. So for my dad, that moment was too hard for her to believe. If you would have told that this tiny nation would beat Spain and advance to the semis, even just 4 years ago, in 98, he would have said, are you crazy? Michosa, are you crazy? He would have never believed it. But seeing is believing. And Korea restored his faith that day. So, silly soccer story, but I got 2 points. One is be nice to Mr. Hong Myung-bo. He's a legend. Who cares if he was a bad coach? There's a lot of stuff being said, but just lay off him. And second, some things are too hard for us to believe until we see it. We're talking about faith and surrender today, and I want all of us to be thinking about moments in our own lives with our faith where we encountered something too good to be true or something that did not make any logical sense. I'm talking about a story that is familiar to most of us, Daniel in the lion's den. And as we uncover the story, be thinking about yourself and your own relationship with faith. And how would you surrender in a moment like this? Faced with an impossible situation, would you believe in faith that God could and would deliver you? We're going to talk about a new law in the land. Going to be reading from Daniel chapter 6. This is from verse 6. These high officials and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, "O King Darius, live forever." All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors, agreed that the king should establish an ordinance, enforce an injunction. Whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, established an injunction and signed the document so that it cannot be changed. So King Darius signed the document and injunction. So, talk about Daniel. Daniel at this time, he's a senior citizen. He's been serving for many, many years. He served under King Nebuchadnezzar, if you remember from a few Sundays ago, another guy named Belshazzar, and now under a king named Darius. So that means 50, 60 years probably passed by, and at this point in Daniel's life, he is not a young man anymore. When we picture Daniel in the lion's den, what do you picture? Probably like a teenager or somebody young. But imagine a harabaji, like an old grandpa, like an older man in his 80s. That he's lived a lot of life. By this time, Daniel has proven his worth in the kingdom to multiple rulers, and is said in the previous verse that he was a man of integrity, well respected, that nobody could find fault with this guy. So it's saying a lot because he works for a secular company, this big empire, Persia, very wicked, a lot of bad things, but he stands out as a notable man. I want to give an encouragement. Most of you work for secular companies or environments, school or whatever offices or bosses. They have very worldly values. I also pray and hope that you can stand out among your peers, as Daniel did, not being a suck-up, but with your character, with your witness, not being overly cheesy. But Daniel, people saw his integrity, people saw his faith. Doing the little things that make an impact on our world. So this is where we find our hero Daniel. He is serving under a king named Darius. And Darius is one of the few, Daniel is one of the few under Darius' kingdom that has a faith in the God of the Bible. Darius has a lot of people serving under him. All the people under Darius are trying to suck up to him, get a promotion. And so they intentionally propose and pass a law in order to trap Daniel. So there was a lot of jealousy in Darius' court. You have the people that work under him in this court that are of Persian background, and they are pagans. They don't believe in God. And then you have Daniel. He's an outsider. He's a Jew. He serves a foreign god. But Daniel finds success in whatever he does, and his track record is squeaky clean. They can't find anything bad with him. So they pass this law saying for 30 days, silly law, that nobody can pray to another god. Darius is the only person you can pray to. We continue. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knee 3 times a day and prayed, gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. These men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. Came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, "O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days, except to you, O king, will be cast into the den of lions?" So, Daniel did not change his routine after he heard this law passed. It said that as usual, as routine, he went to a private room and prayed before God. He went on his knees, kind of like this image here, and gave thanks. So I love how this was Daniel's routine. It was something that he did consistently, like brushing your teeth or making your bed. Some mornings I forget to make my bed, but I did brush my teeth, so that's good. But it's never too late to start a routine. You can be 12 or 22 or 52. If you see all the godly men and godly women in history, they have their discipline. They have their routine of spending time with God. And it's hard because a lot of us can be legalistic about it. If I don't pray for 2 hours a day or I read when I get up, a lot of times we feel guilty. So that's not what I'm suggesting we become. But these people who are so close to God, they did not see regular devotion. They did not see quiet time with God as a chore. Daniel certainly didn't. It was a regular part of his day, like putting on his socks or getting a glass of water. And it's convicting because many days I'm guilted into reading the Word or to pray. It's more out of duty. Koreans love duty, right? It's not, I get time to spend with my Savior. It's more like, I need to so I don't feel shame. So I think I pray for a heart that doesn't see time with God as a duty, but as a delight. But sometimes, if it is a chore, sometimes that's okay, especially for some of the students in this room. Some days you're not going to feel like reading your Bible, spending time in worship or prayer, but that's okay. The reason why having consistent spiritual discipline is important is those days when you show up and spend time with God and His Word, when you don't feel like it, you're actually growing your spiritual muscle. I'm going to brag on our students for just a quick second here, H-Mart Youth. They went to a retreat a few weeks ago, and last week I got a text from one of the students from a neighboring church saying, "Hey, the retreat really revived us. We want to start this morning prayer with your students at 9 a.m. And I'm like, 9 a.m., like that's really early. So like I didn't tell her that, but in the back of my mind, I was doubting, oh my gosh, like could our students really get up an hour before service? And honestly, I was convicted from my own lack of faith. God not only has the power to shut the mouths of lions, but he also has the power to inspire a little 12-year-old boy, right, to get up an hour earlier for morning prayer. And they proved me wrong. There was like a half dozen of them praying with another church for revival and just for a fellowship. And so all that to say, show up even when you don't feel like it. In the long run, you are going to get stronger spiritually as you spend time with your Savior. So the men who are trying to trap Daniel, these little weasels, they kind of catch him in the act. You know, it's not Daniel. He wasn't making a big show of things. He was privately praying in an upper room. So I'm not sure what kind of surveillance these people had. You know, maybe they had like some binoculars or some drones, some Persian drones up there taking pictures. He's like, aha, I caught you in the act. You prayed to God. You broke the law. You're punished. It's really sneaky. And they're so pathetic. They're so jealous of Daniel that Daniel finds favor. So they make this temporary law. They're spying on him, trying to get him killed. And, another side point, but we do what we can to be obedient to God and loving to all people. But let's face it, some people, they're just going to be mean. They're not going to like you. And as a people pleaser, I have to remind myself, I'm here to serve God first, people second. And Daniel did not compromise. He did not try to fit in with the rest of the king's court. Daniel's enemies go before the king. They're tattling on him, saying, King Darius, look at what Daniel's doing. You need to punish him. He's bad. Pathetic, right? But Darius is like, okay, like I need to keep my word. And so he's regretful that he made this law. But the king says he cannot revoke this law. So no choice but for Daniel to be punished. And so this is a story I think most of us remember from Sunday school. Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel, as a punishment, being thrown into this cave where lions live. And I'm sure these lions are cranky, more importantly, hungry. And anytime animals are in the Bible, it's fascinating. I'm sure these lions were really fluffy and cute right up until they clawed your face or maybe chewed your organs out. I don't know, but probably didn't feel good as you got eaten alive, maybe a little painful. So I want to talk about faith and surrender. I think this is the big tension of our lives. What is faith and how is surrender connected? Faith is a complete trust or belief in something or somebody. You can have faith in the stock market. You can have faith in your sports teams. You can have faith in your kids doing the right things. You can have faith in the higher power. Faith that a God cares. Faith that somebody loves you. And surrender is letting go. Sometimes it means letting go of control or idea that you are in charge. Surrender can mean defeat, but it also means letting somebody or somebody take charge or power over you. Surrender is hard because we want to be in control. We admit when we do surrender, hey, I'm not in control. I don't got this. I got to let go of any illusion of control. You can have faith without surrender, but in order to surrender, you need to have faith. What that means is I can say, hey, I believe in God, I love him, blah, 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 but still hold on to my dreams and my plans. I can conveniently believe in this God, but hold on to areas of my life that I do not want to let go of. But I would argue if you were to surrender your dreams and plans to God, I would say you're exercising your faith in this God. Daniel, at this point in his life, had a lot of experiences surrendering his preferences. At one point in his life, converting to veganism. Could you imagine, not eating meat, but just celery and carrots? And you also see his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they surrendered to God. They said no to man-made idols and got thrown into a fiery furnace. And here, Daniel, not compromising his faith and following God's laws instead of man's laws, he's going to be thrown into a den full of lions where he is to meet his fate. So why does Daniel surrender to this God? Why does Daniel have such a great faith? So I do think it says something about the longevity of walking with God over the years. He's seen over and over again God delivering him, his friends, taking care of him, rescuing him. But we're so forgetful. I think about the disciples in the New Testament who over and over kept doubting and saying the wrong things because they forgot the power of Jesus, who walked and lived with Jesus for 3 years, but kept forgetting about who Jesus was. And I think the hardest part of this story for me was just the familiarity. We have heard this sermon before if we grew up in church. And at some point, it's hard to find something new to say. I don't think I have anything new or exciting to make you say, yes, I will close the mouths of lions, or another just being so, on fire. And another challenge is in thinking of our lives, when are we going to ever come close to having a moment like this? We live pretty comfortable, cush lives, and we're tempted to compromise our faith. But if we ever said no to God or yes to the world, will we actually be persecuted to the point of death? Here in Colorado, probably not. And so I want to paint this sermon in the light where we think more about our faith and this concept of surrendering. So let's be real. Most of us are not going to be thrown into a lion's den. Even though that'd be a cool 20 seconds before you die, at least you can make a little video, right? You could Instagram lion, maybe a die famous, or take a cute little selfie with a lion. That'd be cool for a little bit. But all of us in this room, we have some faith. Some of us a strong faith, some of us newer faith, some of us years of walking with God. And I do believe all of us in this room, sooner or later, will face moments where you have to exercise your faith in God. And in those moments, will we surrender to God's sovereignty, or will we try to hold on to any illusion of control? For Daniel, it was life or death. But he didn't care about his own life. He surrendered. Not that he was taking for granted God was going to save him, but it was better to put his faith in God more than people. So for you, what could that be? Maybe it's letting go of your plans for the future. Maybe you have the next 20, 30 years of your life mapped out. You imagine the life you want to live in comfort and prosperity for you and your family. And while that's not simple, are you willing to surrender that to God? Knowing Daniel said, hey, my life is not my own. I give you, God, control. Could you say that of your plans? I know for us, it's been a season of uncertainty and surrender. Grash and I have been fostering little ones, and some days it's really hard not knowing the future. Some days I get really mad, and I do not want to let go. Some days my faith is really weak, and I feel really helpless. And the system makes me really cynical. I question why God has us in this place, caring for a little baby when the future is so unclear and the outcome might not be what I think is best. And yet God calls me to have faith, not in people or in the courts. And God calls me to surrender whatever little plans I have back to Him. And even if the result is not what I want, that God is still good and that God still cares. And that is the hardest part about faith and surrender. I know God is good, but I question if God cares. If God cares, why would He let this difficulty to pass? If He cares, why would He make this hurdle or this trouble in my family's life? I question God's care time and time again when He has shown Himself faithful. So how about for you? For you, what is the area of your life that you need to let go of and surrender to God? Is it finances? Is it relationships? Is it daily habits? Is it your plans and dreams? What is your faith in? Keep reading here. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. And these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, "Know, king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians. No injunction or ordinances that the king established can be changed." And the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." The stone was brought and laid onto the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his own signet, the signet of the Lord's, his lords, that nothing may be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to the palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. So Darius threw Daniel into this cave of lions. He basically said, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." Maybe Darius heard stories of Daniel's past. Maybe he had first seen Daniel's devotion to God. Either way, he said, "Hey man, I'm sorry to do this. I got to kill you. I got to put you in prison. I got to put you with the lions, and you're going to get eaten. But I know you have this God. I hope he can help you if he is real." And he was so distraught, he didn't eat or sleep. He knew he made a mistake. And because, Daniel is a good dude. And Darius realized he made a mistake. Keep reading here. "Then at the break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, 'O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you?' Then Daniel said to the king, 'O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm.'" Skip to 24. "And then the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions." Okay, so a few things happen here. Darius, early in the morning, as he had been stressed, regretting his decision to pass this law, which sent one of his best advisors to death, yells into the lions, "Daniel, are you still alive? Did God indeed deliver you?" And, if Daniel were eaten, I don't think he would go, "Yes, I died." He wouldn't say that. So I do wonder if Darius had some faith that a miracle happened. And Daniel blurts out, "Yes, king, my God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me." And also, amazingly, those guys that wanted Daniel dead, they in turn got thrown into the lion's den as a punishment, and they met their demise. So here's the thing. I think most of us hearing this story will hear this and think, that's kind of a cute story, right? That's a children's story. While not realizing God not only has the power to shut the mouths of lions, but he can also raise the dead, split the sea, and guess what? Do things that make zero logical sense in our brains. If we think about it logically, lions do not just close their mouths if they're hungry. They eat whatever. They're king of the jungle. And I was convicted reading this. Man, do I know following God many times, if not most times, does not make any sense. Turning water into wine? Can't scientifically explain that. Feeding 5,000 people from a few pieces of bread? Makes no sense. A man dying for mankind, coming back to life 3 days later? These things don't make sense. And yet, when we live our lives and faith so intellectually, forgetting sometimes, if not most times, following God isn't supposed to make the most amount of sense. That's what faith is. God does things to baffle us. God does things that make no explanation whatsoever. God can do things that are impossible. So often, I have doubt living my life as if God exists, but he's just out there not caring, not able to do impossible things day to day. And I say these things so that we won't be, weirdo people that is going to say stuff like, "Oh, God's going to give us a promotion today," or "God's going to magically bring in 200 people to our church." That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying miracles will happen, but I'm challenging us to believe if God wills, it can happen. Because guess what? Shutting the mouths of lions, that's easy. Raising the dead to life, no problem. This God who created the sun by just saying, "Hey, go over there," what is too hard for him? Our problem is not so much that we lack faith in God's care, as much as we underestimate that this God can do anything if he wills. We give ourselves so much credit and put this God in this little box because everything has to make sense to my little brain. But God does not exist in this little brain in our heads. In fact, we're going to spend the rest of eternity unpacking who he is. He's so vast, so different from all of us. So do you believe that God can do anything in your life as well? Do you have the faith to surrender to this God? Then King Darius wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell on the earth, "Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is a living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end." He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius. So to close this chapter, similar to a few weeks ago when we saw a pagan king worshiping God, so this was Darius' testimony of a faithful and powerful God. Darius was so moved, he made a decree that the people of his land are to tremble and fear before this God. We see a king proclaiming our God as a forever kingdom, the God that lasts forever, who does works on earth and in heaven. Sometimes stories like this have a hard time landing on us because we separate stories from the Bible from our world in 2026. We don't hear stories of lions' mouths being shut or miracles happening day to day. But I do believe miracles happen day to day, especially if you pay attention to some missionaries overseas or in remote places. They tell stories of God showing up over and over again. But we tend to be very rational creatures. And if things don't make sense in our brains, we kind of dismiss it. We're like, oh, those are just Bible stories. That doesn't make any sense in our lives. I have a story. It's just a small reminder of God's care and his power in his life. But a few years ago, Gracia and I were visiting a friend in Vail. We're not skiers, but we wanted to say hi to a buddy of mine. So we chose to drive up there and spend the night in the cabin. And so we were driving. Maybe it was February. There was a huge snowstorm. And the snowstorm got so bad that as I was driving, I saw cars pulling off the side of the road. And, I was like, I wonder what that's about. And I'm going to keep driving anyway. And I ignored the weather forecast, but at some point, they closed the highways, and so I had to take this little side detour road. But the snow got so bad that as we were driving, my little 2009 red Corolla, that's all I saw. I just saw white, just all in front of me. That's all I saw. I couldn't see my sides, my back. All I saw was white, just plastered with snow. Didn't even know what road we were on, and by this point, we were going up a mountain. So if we veered too far to the left or to the right, I think we could have easily fallen off. So in that moment, my wife wasn't very happy with me. She probably thought she married an idiot. The one idiot driving through a blizzard, up a side of a mountain, not smart. And I'll be honest, I'm not a man of great faith, but I did pray. God, can you protect us? Would you protect us? Just said a small little prayer. And I was scared, but I had a little faith that God might be able to deliver us if he wanted to. God had provided for before, so I was really hoping he would deliver again. So I'm not sure how long I was driving for up the side of this mountain. I'm lost. The GPS is confused. I didn't see any rest areas in sight. It's been miles since I saw any humans, and all I saw was just white blizzard. But I kid you not, just a few moments after praying, I see a little light. And it gets bigger. And somehow, some way, we had accidentally stumbled upon this one little plow truck in the middle of nowhere who was paving the snow. So I followed this truck for the next hour, which is good because he kind of dictated what the pace was and where the turns were. And I think if I went any faster or turned quickly, it could have been really bad for us. And, I call him my little angel. He shut the mouth of that blizzard. And so that little plow truck guided us up until the Vail exit. And I'm thankful to have made it in one piece. And so a part of me is like, yeah, that could have been total coincidence. And that could have happened to anyone. But honestly, for me, that was just another small example of God saying, hey, I got you. I'll take care of you. Snowstorms is nothing. I can do anything. And guess what, Insu? No matter where you're at, I can take care of you. But I want to challenge us to be this week men and women of faith, to believe that God can do the impossible in your life if he wills. And I want us to surrender whatever we are holding on to into his care. And let's also point back to the gospel. Daniel was betrayed by the king's court because of his own jealousy, because of their jealousy. King Jesus was betrayed by his own creation because of our jealousy of who he was. Daniel was innocent and righteous, and yet he was convicted for a crime he did not commit. Jesus was innocent and righteous and convicted for the sins of mankind. Daniel spent the night in the lion's den where he came out alive as God sent angels to shut the mouths of lions. Jesus spent 3 nights in the tomb where he came out alive and shut the mouth of death, Satan, and sin. Daniel surrendered to God's plan, even though he knew the cost. Jesus surrendered to God's plan as he knew the cost, as he suffered and surrendered for the sins of many. So I hope we can close as we close, we examine our hearts this morning. Take a few minutes to just ask ourselves some reflection questions. What are things that are too hard for me to believe? And what areas can I surrender to God today? So give you a moment just to think through, maybe even spend some time in prayer, and then we'll close together.